Hi everybody, Russ from My Hammers 11. Hope you're all safe and well. For this channel, please consider subscribing and hitting that bell icon so you're made aware of any time we put new content on. We've got a big charity event coming up on Thursday for the Iron Supporting Food Bank, so make sure you keep an eye on that. And also we're doing some stuff for Isla's Fight campaign with Steve Krieger and the My Hammers 11 Prince. So loads of stuff coming up, so make sure you hit the bell icon so you made aware of any time I put new content on. Loads of great guests coming up, including today's guest. Another recommendation from Mr. Phil Whelan from Stop Hammer Time. He does like recommending good guests, and they've all no pressure, Jim, but they've all been great. It's Jim Reid. Hi, Jim. How are you?
I'm well, Russ. I'm very well. And you well yourself?
Yeah, I'm all right. I'm all right. You know, obviously, you know, we had two friendlies today, didn't we? Simultaneously played for some reason.
Wins.
Good wins. I know. Take that. We'll take that.
How like getting a hat trick, you know, that's what we've waited for. Let's hope he can turn it on in the season. Yeah,
exactly. And it was quite interesting how they split, because I was on the assumption that once the under 23s were going to do Wickham and Ipswich were going to be the first team, but no, they split them both, and they all played well. You know, Bowen got a couple as well, which was good, which is encouraging, and nice to see Dean Garner got like a hat trick of assists as well. So
yeah, I saw a couple of those online, and he looked quite nifty. I mean, obviously he's done well at West Brom, but if he can step up at this level, it'll save us a lot of money.
Yeah, definitely. It's what we need. We need that sort of we've got the right covered now with Bowen. So if he could do the left, that'll do us nicely. We wouldn't have to spend any money we haven't got, so it's okay.
Well, we're not spending any money. I know that online people are shouting and tearing their hair out. We're not going to spend any money. Don't be under that apprehension. If we can get a couple of fullbacks and a centre half, and maybe a centre forward of some sort of cover, I think that would be it. All cheap, all loans.
Yeah. Well, I think we're all pretty assuming that's going to be the case, don't we? You know, we're a bit realistic nowadays. But how are you? How's lockdown and stuff been for you and the production company and stuff?
Okay, yeah. I mean, we're very lucky that we can get on with most of our work is sort of mucking around, really. But being in lockdown means that me and my business partner, who's a Fulham supporter, don't waste most of our time just talking about football, which is what we're inclined to do. So lots of Zoom calls, lots of reading scripts, and fortunately, the government have helped with an insurance scheme for television, so production's starting again. And we've got something filming in Liverpool next month. So
fantastic.
I can't complain.
No,
exactly. I wouldn't say I'd enjoyed it. It was great when football came back. Yeah. It was good to sort of have my son around my place watching the game, particularly the Chelsea night, you know, and it just gives you something to worry about and get depressed about. And we're only 2.5 weeks away from that happening all over again.
I know, it's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy. It's like proper famine and feast the other way around. It was like we had loads of football, we had no football, then loads of football, then no football, and now we're back to having, I think we got Brentford on Saturday, the other stadium. Next week we got Bournemouth, and it's it's crazy how quickly it's all happening. Are you when you watch the games with you and your son, are you a crowd noise on or off type person?
I like to flick between the two, Russ. I mean, I do. It is fantastic, and it was really telling in the first two games when we didn't play that well how little noise was coming from our players.
Yeah,
one of the things about the current team that you worry about, that there aren't many leaders. Rice, one of the youngest players, seems a lot more motivated than some of the older players who should know better, and obviously Noble is as well. But I ended up with the crowd noise in the end, just to pretend it was like a normal game. And I can't see us back in the stadium for quite a while, unfortunately.
No. I mean, it's funny, you just walk around, I live in Hornchurch, so, I'd walk around in a shirt and people just stop you for a chat about West Ham. It's like, okay, let's talk about West Ham, obviously 2 meters apart, social distancing. And everyone I've spoken to, they were like, yeah, we're not going to get back this side of Christmas. And I'm like, well, yeah, probably. I think that's probably likely.
Maybe 15,000 in the stadium. I mean, God willing, it will happen. But I'm suspecting not seeing many games this season.
No. It is weird. I mean, I'm one of the 300 there, and it is really, really weird. It's so quiet that you can hear the journalists' computers, like laptops, clicking, and it's like that's how quiet he's really. My Siri's just turned itself on. Now yeah, but I mean, even when I'm at the ground, I have to put the crowd noise on my iPad just so I can, because it's just so weird. I don't like it. But
you know, a game like the Chelsea game, which would have been so special with a crowd there, and seeing Lampard after the game, and I don't dislike him as much as most of our fans. But he was so upset. He would have been a lot more upset if the crowd had been there, because he would have got so much stick that night.
And you had. I mean, you had Mark Noble there. Mark Noble, you know, and he obviously wasn't in the squad, but I saw him. He was sat in essence, where the disabled area is. That's where all the auxiliary squad members are, because they're already socially distanced chairs already. And he was kicking every ball, and then as soon as the whistle went, he leaped over the barrier. He could have easily done his ankling, to be honest, because he just wanted to get down and get into the tunnel and get into the changing room and celebrate. And so, you know, you had a fan there in Mark, and obviously it was great to see. And obviously, you know, they did the job. Moisey's done the job again. You know, he's come and done. You know, if he had a job performance, he's achieved what he set out to do twice. Fair play to him.
I think he. I mean, when he got sacked the first time, I was all for keeping him.
Me too.
And I think there's a real distance between what our supporters want and what reality is. And I think I can see his drawbacks, but I think he'll build a solid team. I don't think we'll be in a relegation fight this season. And we're just going to go from there. They've got to have a plan, and then eventually maybe we'll get new owners and we'll have some money. But I think for the next few seasons, we're just going to be bobbing along. Yeah. And those of us who've been supporting the club for many, many more years than we like to, talk about, you know, it's never been that much better. Although a lot of the players I'm going to talk about did come from a period when we got to finals. That would be nice if we could bring that back again.
Yeah, that would be nice. I fancy the League Cup this year. Yeah. We haven't won that one yet, and no one else gives a shit about it. So, you know, it's just the nature of when the League Cup starts, isn't it? It starts in. I think it's the game after. I think we play Newcastle on the Saturday, and I think it's the 16th. Is like the first round we're in, and so naturally you're not going to put out a weakened team because you've just started the league. You know, it's all about maintaining. By January, you know how your season's panning out, and if you're doing all right, then you'll have a go in the FA Cup because you know you've got. And but I wouldn't mind to go at the League Cup this year. And I'm not being funny. Moyes can put two teams out and perform like they both did this, all being a friendly. It's encouraging to see. And Premier League this year, so you can't really complain. I feel sorry for people like Watford fans, really, because the last time they saw their team was in the Premier League, and the next time they'll see it, they're in the Championship, and it's like,
I know, and well, they shouldn't have gone down either. That club were doing, sacking the manager when they did, but fortunate for us.
Yeah, well, it's that we were like the battering ram of the Premier League last year. I think we got like two or three I think we relegated a couple of teams. We got a couple of managers sacked as well. I think we sort of made a big impression without necessarily our own league position. But now, Jim, you mentioned about you've been a fan for more years than you'd like to remember. How did it start for you? Why is West Ham your club?
Well, it was sort of inevitable, really. My dad, like so many, and I think one of the great things about supporting a football club, particularly for West Ham fans, is the nature of the area around the ground and the culture's changed so much in the last sort of 40 years. My dad's family from Bethnal Green and Stratford, West Ham supporters. I was brought up in North London, but I had to be a West Ham fan. Yeah. So my first game, I was sort of really racking my memory for this. I think I've got this right. It was January 1967 against Stoke City. And I didn't see a huge amount of the game. And I went with my dad, and we used to stand at the bottom of the South Bank on the right-hand side if you're facing the North Bank, rather, if you're facing the South Bank. Yeah. And it was a 1-1 draw. Jeff Hurst scored. That place... unfortunately, my father died when I was a teenager, and when I started taking my nephews to matches, that's where we used to stand. And it was a sort of, and they'd known my father, but he died when they were sort of relatively young. And it was a sort of place of sort of remembrance for us as much as anything else. It was something to do with the family. But the first game, the thing I really remember about it, because it was actually more exciting than the match, is that after the match, we went to a pub where my dad met some of his cousins and also friends. And I was sort of smuggled in, given a lemonade and some crisps, which was fantastic. But we didn't stay that long. And walking back to Upton Park Station, we then got some fish and chips, which became a ritual for us every time we went to a match. And also I was told very firmly by my old man, don't tell your mum we went to the pub. So I felt going back on the train that I had this sort of grown up sort of vow to keep to my father. And I used to go with him a lot, and he usually worked on a Saturday. He worked on building sites. So my memories were always meeting him at Bank Station, because he always seemed to be working on sites in the city. So from that moment on, you go, it's your team through thick and thin, a lot of thin. And you put up with it, and you know, you hand it down. So my son, I took him to his first game in '95, and we're in the Bobby Moore stand, the new stand, beat Ipswich 2-1. He's still going. We sit next to each other. That's kind of what the club means to me, as much as the players and the games. But they've been fun as well.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's so true. It's not about, you know, it's not about the football. You know, we backed the wrong horse, if that's the case. But you're right. It's that sort of family connection. It is like a ritual, as you said. You know, you go and get the fish and chips, and it's just something about it. And I think that's what it seems, since particularly restart, is how much, you know, people are dying to get back and just seeing their mates, you know, and it's not necessarily about watching the game. We could be in the Championship, we could be in League One. It's not really about that. It's about how the sort of just seeing this, you know, obviously your son sit next to you. You've probably got the people behind you, you know, and you know, you might pass them in the street and not realise who they are. But when at West Ham, you just have this togetherness, and it's lovely to see.
And I don't get it as much as the London Stadium. I don't want to bang on about the London Stadium, but I can't. There are a few things finer in my life as a memory than walking up the steps at Upton Park on a night match, and when you get to that position where you're looking down on the pitch with the floodlights, and that is absolutely a memory you take to your grave. I don't know what it is. The atmosphere at those games is always better. It's something special. It's a communal kind of connection you've got with the football club, with the area, with your family, with your mates. And I think that's, you know, obviously we think we're special. I'm sure other supporters from other clubs, they'd say the same thing as well. Yeah,
I know we're slightly biased, but I get quite a lot of other fans from other clubs watching the channel, because they don't have anything like what we do, they say. So, and I know we're slightly biased, but I think it's grounded in some sort of truth, you know, in terms of the West Ham fans are a unique bunch, and they haven't had much. They haven't. He said a lot of thin, not thick, and so they've had to
60,000 average gate for a club that hasn't won anything for 40 years.
Yeah,
there's probably not another club in world football with those stats. So there is something special about it, and we'll take it to our grave. Hopefully, we'll win something before then.
Yes, God hoping, God willing. I mean, I'll take a boring Kirbishley type season next season. You know, we've had a few too many tight, squeaky bum times for my liking over the last couple of years. So I'll take some mid-table, you know, just mediocre positions, and then, you know, we still have our cup finals against Tottenham and Chelsea and Arsenal every year. So, you know, that does me. And I think a lot of people, you know, they go, oh, we'd love to win the league and stuff like that. But I don't think you know, we have so many, as you said, there's so much thin and not enough thick. When we do have the thick bits, we really, really appreciate them.
Yeah, you know? I think you're right. I think if you support a team that wins all, you know, when Liverpool won the league, you know, they deserve to win the league.
Yeah.
But, they haven't really been going through hell for the last 30 years. They won the European, you know, the Champions League 2 or 3 times in that period. The FA Cup, I mean, they beat us in that final. I mean, we'd do anything for a League Cup win. But but when we get wins, good wins, it's brilliant, and particularly against the big clubs.
And we know 3 or 4 times a season they'll do it, and that's the thing. But it's which games, and then you'll lose to Burnley the next week because it's the West Ham way, and so every game you have to tune in because you don't know what's going to happen. They're just so unpredictable. That's what I love about West Ham. You just don't know what you're going to get.
It's always been like that. So it's something in the DNA, you know.
Yeah, and it always has been. Right, let's go on to the 11. So obviously, you mentioned, the whole idea is, so the whole thing is we basically get every guest we get on, bar 2 people, I think, Harry Redknapp and Ian Bishop. They never pick their 11, but fair enough. But everyone else has picked their 11. So the only rule is you have to be alive to have seen them play. Now, I'm not speaking out of turn, Jim, but you're an experienced fan, so you have a nice spread. Maybe
I've seen
good.
all their best players, I think.
You've seen all of them.
There are a few actually. In one of the positions in my team, it might have been filled by another player who I hadn't seen. I decided at first I was going to go for the worst West Ham 11.
Oh,
the sort of team that if I'd been on the bench, I would have been very upset if I hadn't got on the pitch. So I was going to introduce people to players like Bertie Lutton, Paul Hilton, and Alan McKnight, who until Roberto was the worst goalkeeper I'd ever seen, but Roberto stumps them off. But instead of that, there's enough depressing kind of news for West Ham fans. I want to go for something more positive, and my rules are twofold. They're all players that have been produced by West Ham.
Nice.
And they have to have played more than 50 games. Ooh. And I'm not going to pick necessarily the best players, although in a lot of positions I have. Some of the players I pick just because I like them.
Yeah,
and they were playing at a period that I really enjoyed going to West Ham. So, for instance, Harry Redknapp, you mentioned, I nearly went with him, but I went with another player on the wing who was more exciting for me. So I'll start off in the first
starting goal. Who have we got in goal, Jim?
The goalkeeper. I'd probably been picked by a lot of people. Mervyn Day. Born in Chelmsford, played for us 194 times. I'm going to be very statistical with this.
I like the stats. Yeah,
and obviously he was there when we reached the cup final. We won the cup final and the European Cup Winners' Cup final, which we lost. The thing I loved about Mervyn Day is he just didn't look like a goalkeeper. He looked like he should have been in the choir. He was so kind of. I remember my mum, who'd take a fleeting interest in West Ham. If the big match was on a Sunday afternoon, he's a nice boy. If there was a close-up on Mervyn Day, he's a nice boy. She was a big fan of his. And he obviously, like so many players that come through the youth system, they come in, he looked really good. We were always thinking England goalkeeper, but he had his flaws. Great shot stopper, sometimes made all the wrong decisions. But I've gone for him just because he looked so sweet. And he looked like a kind of, butter wouldn't melt in his mouth. He was decent. He was in the team that won the cup. So that's the home-produced goalkeeper, Mervyn Day. I'm hoping that it's Trott at the moment we've got is going to turn out to be a good keeper. He looks quite promising.
Yeah, they had. And what's name played as well. The other lad played half an hour or so. Ngang. He came on and he looked really. There was obviously I watched a bit of the under-23s, but there's some good players. There's some big sturdy defenders they've got there. There's a left back who played quite well, and I'm quietly confident. But it'd be great to see Trott do it, and because he's been sort of.
Well, we haven't produced that many goalkeepers.
No, we haven't.
It's not a position we've really thrived in, and in my lifetime, Day is the only one who really established himself in the first team.
You're
we
right.
had some terrible keepers around about that period. I mean, Alan McKnight, who I mentioned, we got from somewhere in Scotland, awful. And then we got Parks, great. Yeah. And then up and down. But so Mervyn Day's my keeper. The right back. Now, Glenn Johnson is without a doubt the best home-produced right back I've seen, but he only played for us 15 times. So I'm going to go with John McDowell, who is a little talked about, not much remembered. FA Cup final winner, played 249 times. Came from East Ham. And the thing I liked about John McDowell, and this is in retrospect, but at the time I knew I liked it, is that he had a haircut like Ronald McDonald. He had this weird sort of permy parting thing, but he was a very good player. He could tackle, he could distribute the ball, very promising. Played many times for the England under-23s, and then I think he went on to Norwich. But good player, not as good as Ray Stewart, who sort of came after him, but of our home-produced players, apart from Johnson, easily the best right back we've had.
Yeah.
The next two are pretty obvious, and it's not because they're just great, but I love them as well for different reasons. I feel bad about, these are the centre-backs, I feel very bad about not finding a place for Alvin Martin, who was a great player for us, seemed a lovely guy, would put his body in front of the ball, which these two players I wouldn't say always would do, but they are so talented that they're not only the best home-produced West Ham players, I think they're the best centre-backs that England's produced since the Second World War. And one of them is obviously Bobby Moore, who I saw play for probably 5 or 6 seasons. And obviously, when I started going, it was just after England had won the World Cup, and he was a national hero. I probably didn't appreciate his reading of the game as a sort of 8-year-old or whatever old it was. But superb player, and just he's in everyone's heart as a West Ham supporter. But very, very sad when he went to Fulham. I remember being very upset that day. The next player is Rio Ferdinand. So Bobby Moore, Barking, 544 appearances. Rio Ferdinand, Camberwell, 127. Rio, obviously, I saw right from the beginning, right to the end of his West Ham career. Straight away looked a player. Absolutely brilliant, pace and on the ball, but was prone to make mistakes. His concentration at that age, I don't know how old he was when he first came in, 18 years old, wasn't the best. But superb player. We knew, again, one of those players, you watch them play 10 times, they're going to play for England. And I would say one of the players I haven't picked, but is a home-produced player, which is Declan Rice. At this stage of his career, I think Declan isn't as talented as Rio, but reads a game of football and applies himself better than Rio did at the age of 21. But loved watching Ferdinand play for the team, and really liked his brother as well. Loved his brother's attitude, some of the goals he got, and you can tell that that both of them, particularly Anton, have got a huge amount of time for West Ham still.
Yeah, we've had him on the show, and he's absolutely brilliant, fantastic, so open and so honest, and just when you talk to people, and some people you think they've always got a filter on, and they're always, he was just so open. He just laid it all out about West Ham, about what he loved about West Ham, and it was lovely to hear. And he even spoke about Rio and having to follow in his footsteps and how much of an issue that was to him, and didn't even have to ask him any questions like that. He just went on for an hour.
I can imagine. But I think the thing about when Rio was playing for us, we had that Redknapp team that was a joy to watch, and we took risks. And sometimes he was a bit exposed for a young player, but he would also bring the ball out. And I think that when he went to bigger clubs, at first they curbed him doing that. I mean, it's interesting because I mentioned Rice earlier. Although I think Ferdinand has possibly got more natural talent, Rice has also got that ability to bring the ball out, which he doesn't do as much. When he brings the ball out and he starts running, he's very hard to get off that ball. I mean, Maguire, the man in the news at the moment, he does that at United. I thought about putting Rice as a right back because I know he only played there a few times for us, but he played very well at right back. But McDowell's haircut won that over for him, and I'm not having Johnny McDowell in the team. So that's and the left back again belongs to that 70s team that got to cup finals. Is Frank Lampard Senior. A very fine player. there was a sort of swashbuckling kind of thing about Frank that I think gets forgotten quite a lot, because Billy Bonds was like the swashbuckler. You couldn't get more of a pirate than Billy Bonds, particularly when he had his beard, you know, and he picked the ball up on a muddy pitch. It was a joy to see him side through. And, it hurts me not to put Billy Bonds in our team. He doesn't qualify. He's my favourite West Ham player of all time by a country mile, for his attitude and his spirit, and, obviously a great player. I saw him score a hat-trick against Chelsea when we were facing a relegation fight. For a defensive midfield player, wonderful. But Frank was a really good player, great shot. And to sort of remind myself a little bit about this, I watched the highlights of the European Cup Winners' Cup final. And, of course, I did remember he made that appalling mistake for their first goal, then gets a fantastic shot on for the equaliser. That and the kind of iconic celebration against Everton in the semi-final of the FA Cup. He had to be there. Played twice for England. Also, any man who owns a pub and a nightclub is, quite high in my estimation. And I do believe might be an apocryphal story, that he had a statue in his living room at home of himself in an England kit, and it was to scale. It was the same size as Frank. So for all those reasons and his footballing ability, I go with him. And he was born in East Ham. He played 551 times for West Ham. These are all league appearances. Yeah. So that's my defence. Dane, McDowell, Moore, Ferdinand, Lampard. Centre back partnership is brilliant. We could have had Alvin Martin in there. That would have still been brilliant. We could have had Declan there. It would have been brilliant. We've done quite well at centre-back. Moving on. Now, there are a couple of players in my midfield which are not there on ability necessarily, and will have people shaking their head maybe. But my right winger is Johnny Harris.
Oh, Johnny Harris,
The whopping whippet. He played for us 57 times. Mainly because he was 5'5" and only 9 stone. And when he first started playing for us, I think he was 17. And you actually feared for him every time he went on the pitch. He looked like he'd sort of break in half. And there was a sort of game against Chelsea when Chopper Harris just almost lifted him off the pitch. And I think he had to go to hospital.
That was he got injured, didn't he? Then I think that was it. He had buggered up his career or something like that, I think, after that.
But he had a thing about him, and the only other player I saw this in was a Millwall player called Gordon Hill, who was a winger. If there's such a thing as a Cockney personality in a footballer, both of those players had it. They had a sort of cheek and impudence about them that was a joy to watch. And although his career, I think he retired when he was 24. Yeah. For me, if I played 57 times for West Ham, I'd be delighted with that.
Yeah.
But he's just a favourite of mine. I couldn't not have him in the team, because I would just watch the guy, really enjoy his skill, but just also be wishing he's not going to get thumped. I saw Redknapp play a number of times, and the thing that I most remember about Redknapp, which is ironic considering what happened afterwards, is the way that Billy Bonds used to look after him. Yeah. So in a match, if Harry got clattered, because he wasn't a bad player, but he was quite slender as well. Yeah. He wasn't in the Johnny Harris league. He wasn't a matchstick, but he didn't look that big. But Bonds would sort out whoever had got him. He'd sort of protect him. I preferred Harris. I like Redknapp. Preferred Harris. Now, I don't really think I need a defensive midfield player here, but I'm going to pick one. Okay. Really, with the team I've got, my midfield player next would have probably been Martin Peters on talent, or Frank Lampard Jr. Yeah. But I'm not going to go for those two players. I'm going to go for George Paris from Barking, 239 appearances for us at fullback and in midfield. Because once again, he was a player as a fan that you identified with. You know, he had his song, Georgie Takes No Shit. He was a tough guy, but he was a sort of gentle giant. he could dish it out, but there was something very placid about him on the pitch, and sort of he didn't really like hurting people. That's what I like to believe. Had a decent shot. He was, I think he played about 28 times in the season when we finished third. So he wasn't a mug as a player. And quite interesting when you're talking about Moyes and being practical. It's always forgotten that there are players like that in teams who don't make the headlines, who aren't maybe the most naturally gifted, that every team needs. You know, I remember I've got a celebrity mate who's a Man City team. And, oh, fuck, I forgot. I asked him who the Man City players liked.
Yeah.
Who's their favourite player? And it wasn't, this was like 7 or 8 years ago. It wasn't any of the fancy players. It was, and I've forgotten the player's name.
Fernandinho?
No, the English player, played for England many times.
Gareth
midfield
Barry?
Player.
Not Barry.
Yeah, it was Gareth Barry.
Gareth. Oh, yeah. Okay.
So he said he talked to the players. He says, Gareth, and they said Gareth Barry, because wherever I am on the pitch, I can look up and Gareth Barry will be there to take a pass. And as you know, we think we know about football, we don't really. I think people who work in the game can pick that out in players. And I think Paris was a very, very useful player for us. But more importantly, he was my gentle giant. He had a great smile, but he could boot someone all over the pitch. So I'm going to put him in there because I think, being West Ham, even though we've got some great players in this team, we need to not take any risks.
Yeah, and you're right what you said about sort of the sort of those sort of not unglamorous players, but those sort of 7 out of 10 players. Because when you interview when I interview ex-players, I say, watch, they give their 11 as well, and there's players that always appear in those 11s which never appear in fans' 11s. So it might be, interviewing Mad Dog or Johnny or Bish or someone like that, and they all put Pete Butler in their team.
Yeah. Well, he had that. Yeah,
exactly. And similarly, in the modern era, everyone puts Hayden Mullins in their team.
Yeah. No, I can see that with both.
And it's the same what you were saying. Exactly. It was really interesting. Really interesting.
Well, if you look at our current team, a lot of our fans don't seem to like Fornals.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's come off completely, but you can see that he is available all the time.
Yeah.
That player. And obviously Bowen is as well. And Bowen's obviously done better so far. But if I was a player playing for West Ham, Jarrod Bowen, with the amount of work he goes through, plus his skill, he's not in the same class as Anderson on the ball. Anderson could be a great player, but there's obviously something missing there. So, Paris is my workhorse in midfield, because next to him, I've got the gentleman of Barking, so Trevor Brooking. 528 appearances. Probably gave the best performance I've seen from a West Ham player in a match, which was my favourite ever game, which was a night match at Upton Park, the 76 European Cup Winners' Cup semi-final against Eintracht Frankfurt. Brooking scored 2 goals. They're both really good goals. Clips, I think, are probably played quite a lot before the matches. I can't remember so many played. But he was absolutely sublime on that night. And these pitches were not like they are now. It was mud. He picked his way through it, no pace, but could turn a player with his body. Could score really good goals. Brilliant passer of the ball. Just a fantastic player. And also, when my son was about 3, I was doing the classic sort of husband Christmas Eve dash to try and get some presents. And I took my boy with me, and we were on Oxford Street, and I was walking down the road, and coming towards me is Trevor Brooking. So I thought, I don't like saying it. I said, look, I'm sorry stopping you. Really loved you playing, watching you play, and talked about the Eintracht. Gentleman, talked to my son, who even at 3 knew to say, "Come on, you Irons." Wonderful player, and I wish he'd managed us for a longer period of time. I think he would have been a good manager, but he's probably sane enough not to want the grief that comes with that.
Yeah.
So he's my wizard in the middle of midfield.
Sounds great.
And On the left, even though that may not be his best position, but he played there for England a number of times, I picked Joe Cole from Paddington, 157 appearances. Again, with Joe Cole, although he had a really, really good career, the thing about him that was so exciting is when he first came in the team. And in that, he was clearly a guy who loved to play football. To the extent which sometimes he did things he didn't have to do. You know, he did too much. You know, I remember watching when we won the Youth Cup, when we won 6-0 at Upton Park. He just tore, I think we were playing Coventry, just tore them apart on his own. Wonderful, wonderful player. When he came back, I thought he was decent. Shows a lot of respect for the club. Again, he's another person that I used to have greyhounds at Wimbledon, and one Christmas we decided to have an office drink up at Wimbledon. He was there. It was when he was playing with Lille in France. He had a little loan period. He was there with his pals. He'd obviously taken them all there in a minicab. And anyway, we chatted to him a bit. He got chatting to two friends of mine who own dogs. About 3 days later, just between Christmas and New Year, this woman was going up to Liverpool on the train, and someone tapped her on the back. It was Joe Cole. He said, "Do you remember me?" You know, and started talking to her just like an ordinary person. He was going up to do some media work. Very sound bloke. I'd love it if he came back as a coach at West Ham. I suspect he's going to end up at Chelsea. But when he was good, he was really, really good. And I wish we'd held on to him. You know, all those players from that era, we would have had some team. But you have to give Redknapp a lot of credit for some of these players who came through, because they played with a real freedom under him. And that was since we stopped winning things in 1980, that's been our best period.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely. 3 or 4 seasons under Redknapp where we played great football. We had Di Canio. We had all these wonderful English players. And I think we'd take that again. You know, sometimes finish 7th or 5th would be fantastic, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
so definitely. I've got Joe Cole there. Up front, I thought about Jermaine Defoe because I think he's a great finisher.
Yep.
But I couldn't really go with him because I had to go with someone who's West Ham through and through as my small striker, and that's Tony Cottee. Forest Gate, 279 appearances. I saw his debut against Tottenham, which was on New Year's Day, I think, and I had a terrible hangover. I think we beat them 3-0. He scored. Impish, enthusiastic, great finisher. And we really lacked that. I mean, when him and McAvenny were working together, you know, dynamite. That's the last time we had a great strike partnership.
Yeah.
And Dean Ashton's the last time we had a great striker. You know, very unlucky with him. And it seems to be a position where we're cursed, particularly buying players. I mean, in my worst 11, if I picked it, John Radford would have had a very good chance. I mean, I think he played for 70 times and scored once. And it was like, you know, when you've got a horse that's fallen over at loads of fences and some canny owner sells it off to a mug. That's what we got with Radford. You know, he's been a great player and then we buy him. And, you know, that is a pattern that seems to repeat itself a lot. But we don't produce many centre forwards. It's not a position that we've been strong in, as we talked earlier, the centre half position. But goalkeepers and strikers, not really, you know. And Defoe was the last one. But Cottee enjoyed both these periods as a West Ham player, and got to pick him. And next to him, there's only one player, which is Geoff Hurst, who I saw play probably for about 5 or 6 seasons. Born in Ashton under Lyme, 411 appearances, and I love the way he puffed his cheeks. That was the little characteristic about Geoff Hurst that I really enjoyed the most. And he was Ashton's the only other player we've had since then. He had a real shot on him. You know, when I watch Haller play, he's clearly a very talented player. He scored 2 or 3 really good goals, very skillful goals. He doesn't seem one of those players who it came to him, he could just boot it like a rocket. You know, the way that Shearer can do, the way the young lad at United's already doing that. Was it Mason Greenwood?
Yeah.
Haller can't do that. Hurst could do that. He had a wonderful shot on him. He was great in the air. He scored 3 goals in the World Cup final. He came out of our academy. You've got to have him in the team. I've got a signed book from him, which is, you know, pride of place on my bookshelf. So Cotty and Hurst, that's my forward. If I had to pick a manager, I think I'd go for Harry Redknapp, because even though John Lyall is kind of my favourite manager, I think Harry would have a lot of fun with those players.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I agree with what you said about that Redknapp era. That was arguably I'm not as experienced as you, Jim, and you know, it was incredible. That whole sort of, it was like a tapestry. It was like a soap opera, that era. It's just crazy. You'd have like, you know, the old pretenders and the young guys and the foreigners, and it was brilliant.
We had all these sort of, you know, beating teams 5-4 that were going to go down, and you know, we let in loads of goals.
Yeah, we did.
When we finished 5th, I think we had a minus goal difference. We got some real thumpings, but then we played brilliant on occasion, and you know, we got to see. I mean, I think, you know, the seasons that Canio had under Redknapp were fantastic, and you know, it was a shame with Payet that he had that one great season. So Redknapp would be my manager. And that'd be it. The team would play at Upton Park. They'd play in the kit we wore in the 1976 European Winners' Cup final.
Nice.
And there'd only be one substitute. We'd go back to old school, and that would be Declan Rice.
Nice. Because obviously he could cover a number of positions as well. So it's
I'm sure he could play up front.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything that boy couldn't do.
No, I love him. And you know, we someone at Rice, you know, the next season, make him team captain. Mark will always be club captain. Make Deck team captain. If he wants another 50 grand a week, give him another 50 grand a week. You know what I mean? It's like, keep him, make him feel loved. And I don't think. Well, we've only got a couple of weeks, haven't we, until the season starts? But then, because I think the transfer window don't close till like end of October. I think
that goes on forever, and I think I mean, Chelsea are spending so much money, and I don't know whether this is true or not. But I was looking at Twitter before I came on the call, and Rio Ferdinand saying that Lampard is going in for Messi.
Well, yeah, he's put a transfer request in this tonight, apparently.
So,
but yeah.
I'm not sure that's the position name. Well, of course, Messi. They have got a very good creative midfield player at Chelsea.
They do. Yeah, they do. But I think, and Chelsea are after Thiago Silva, aren't they, as a centre back? So that's, I mean, Lampard's got this thing of putting Deck in centre back, isn't he? So as is John Terry Mark II. So hopefully that will quell, at least for this season. So Thiago Silva.
No, I think we'll get another season out of Declan, and with him and Souček and Bowen in midfield, you got that's hard working.
Yeah,
you know, very solid. And I'd just like to see Declan. You know, he got that great goal against Watford.
Yeah,
it's great that both him and Souček can get forward. Declan can bring the ball forward. I mean, it's depressing, but he probably made more dribbles last season than Anderson.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You know, the Anderson who the season before, that great when we beat Arsenal. And he altered his gloves on a run past an Arsenal player. I mean, that was like Di Canio-like arrogance.
Yeah.
And he went from that to being scared to get the football.
It's weird, isn't it? It's so strange. It's I call it. It's the Sebastian Schemmel syndrome.
Yeah.
You know, he was hammer of the year one year. Next year, he was like, where is he gone? And unfortunately, it happens too often with us. Jim, man, it's been an absolute pleasure listening to you.
I really enjoyed it, Russ.
I really loved it. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate all the effort. And obviously, thank you to everyone as well for watching or listening. If you're listening on the podcast or YouTube, whatever you are, subscribe. And until next time, for me and Jim, take care, everyone. Stay safe. Come on, you irons. And we'll see you again very, very soon.
Good night. Bye-bye. Cheers.
Bye-bye. And good night.